the cost of war to the American people. The reason why we are talking about the war today is with the bombardment of the news in the media today about alleged hacking by the Russians of the last election, of the alleged conspiracy between the president-elect versus the candidate who lost the election. There's no point in mentioning names now. And the fact that the U.S. government and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is now massing along the borders of Russia. The American people have to take notice. We have to take notice. And so this show hopefully will give a clarification as to what wars mean, what the perpetual wars mean, not only to America and to the world, but to us, the American people, how the perpetual wars since 9/11, back in 2001, 2002, 2003, have taken all the resources, lives, millions of lives, and devastated people in the Middle East, the constant bombardment of the countries in the Middle East. We have to look at the mirror. We have to look in the mirror now and say, is this what we want for ourselves, for the country, and for our children? So tonight I had invited Stephen du Plessis. He's an anti-war activist. He's been involved in fighting for truth and justice. He's very familiar with what's going on in the war against Syria, against Yemen, and he's actively involved in social media. He's worked on Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, and so we're bringing him in to, lend some light and clarification as to what this war means for us. So, hello, Stephen. He's
Hello,
on
Myrna.
Skype. He's in New Hampshire. What time is New Hampshire? What time is it there now?
It's 9:30 in the evening.
Oh, okay. 6:33 here. So, welcome, Stephen. So, what I would like to do is, I guess just like if you would just, talk about what caused you to really seriously work on this education process, against the wars, and because I follow your social media, and boy, you're really posting a lot of critical information about the war in Syria, about what's going on in Yemen, about what our military is doing, and so forth. So, Stephen, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background on yourself, and also to give us kind of a contextual framework as well. And we have a couple of clips that we want to play as well. So.
Sure, Myrna. My name is Stephen du Plessis. I live in New Hampshire. My mother is of Syrian descent, and my father is French. But really, as I explained to Myrna before, the reason why I'm so involved and committed to fighting against the proxy mercenary conflict in Syria, it's not because of my ancestry or my sort of personal familiarity with Syria in my family being partly Syrian. It's really because there's a great crime being committed right now in the 21st century, and it really is happening in Syria, with over 1/2 million people dead already in cities that now resemble Stalingrad in World War II. The CIA has funneled tremendous amounts of covert monies into the conflict, and really the scenes of devastation and the loss of life. This is a blemish, not only on those of us who are aware, but really on all of humanity. Every day that this war goes on, we collectively as human beings lose our collective humanity. And that's really the reason why I'm so involved in struggling against this conflict.
Right. Just to just a question. Here in the U.S., as you know, they framed it as though it's a civil war, but to the Syrian people, it's foreign powers, right, against a country, against the Syrian people and the Syrian and the country. Basically, there is this desperate move for the U.S. to oust the current president, President Assad. Could you clarify that to our viewers?
Yes, this is true. There's a tremendous amount of subterfuge, and the beginning of the conflict was covered, and it happened in Homs, where there was some really indigenous sort of disagreements with the Assad government, which was, by the way, a democratically elected government. Dr. Bashar al-Assad is an optometrist. His wife, Asma, they were once the overnight guest of the King and Queen of England and the King and Queen of Spain. But what happened was the CIA, as a part of the regime change program, which they were able to carry out in Iraq and in Libya against Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, wanted to also carry out and continue this same regime change project under the guise of the Arab Spring. This is disingenuous. Dr. Assad is the president of Syria, and aside from him being a Ba'athist and a pan-Arab leader, really was elected president by the Syrian people. The problem is that he did not want the Gulf states of Qatar and Saudi Arabia to run a pipeline traversing Syrian territory, delivering natural gas to Western Europe. And aside from that, he has always been a supporter of the Palestinian cause and has always been at odds with the state of Israel, who is still in possession of the Golan Heights, Syrian territory, which was a war prize from the 1967 Arab-Israeli conflict. So the idea that this war is somehow an indigenous civil war and the combatants are all Syrians is false, categorically false. Many of the, quote, rebels, which aren't rebels at all, they are paid mercenary fighters, are from North Africa and all over Europe. And we're seeing the blowback from this participation of these radicalized Sunni Muslims who flow into Syria from both Turkey and Jordan illegally over those two very porous borders, with the governments of Jordan and Turkey allowing this to happen. But it is by no means an indigenous conflict only between Syrians. This is a proxy mercenary war, much like the Nicaraguan Contra War was in the 1980s, funded and supported by foreign powers. This is the great lie that has been perpetuated by Western media and by the U.S. government. And it's something that President Obama is dead wrong about. And one of the reasons why the policy has not been successful is because it's immoral, illegal, and wrong.
Yeah, and you know, in terms of the cost, dollar-wise, I mean, America right now is experiencing one of the, I would think, worst economic climate that we have experienced in a long time. Since 2008, right? There's the crash of Wall Street and the bailout of Wall Street that cost trillions of dollars, and of course, outgoing President Obama is talking about how under his rule there has been a growth of the economy and that things have gotten better. But to the average person, that does not seem to be the case. Certainly, the people who have a lot of money, Wall Street certainly are doing extremely well, and now we have the 6 largest banks in the country. But unemployment is high, no matter what the labor department says that labor is down. But the fact is, a lot of the jobs created are like part-time jobs. There's people who are working 2 to 3 jobs a day to just barely make ends meet. A lot of youth are buried in student loans, and the elderly people who have retired and paid all their working lives into Social Security are not seeing any cost of living increases and so forth. So based on what you've seen, how much do you think? We're going to go to a clip in a few seconds, but what do you think this cost of war has been?
Well, I mean, you touched on a few things. The first thing is the prioritization of our national budgetary expenditures of discretionary spending for 2015. 56% of the budget of discretionary spending was allocated to the military, with only education, infrastructure, healthcare getting very, very small slivers of the budget allocation, which, by the way, is U.S. taxpayer money. So the thing is that Syria really is an extension of this idea, this kind of focus and the twisted priorities that our federal government has. And by the way, really one of the areas where President Obama really has been completely disingenuous from what he said initially he was going to spend money on, refocusing on fixing America first and rebuilding our infrastructure, making us competitive in manufacturing, making our education a first-class education, competing again with all of the European and the nations who are quickly catching up to us here in the United States.
Let's
So I think there's...
Let's play this short clip.
Sure.
It was produced by the World Economic Forum, and it's making its rounds. It's been seen by 2 million people, and we are proud and thankful that they produced this and that we're able to share this to the public as a part of our education on this very important issue. If we don't seem to have audio. Do you see this? Are you seeing this, Stephen?
No, I'm not seeing it on my end.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no.
Thank you. I mean, that's great. You know what? This is a live show, so since we didn't have the sound, I want to replay it. I mean, the impact is just so incredible. That was spent on this war in 2015 in 1 year. There are reports that in 2016 the U.S. dropped 26,000 bombs in the Middle East, which equates to about one bomb per every 20 minutes. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the proof is that, for example, we just saw in the liberation of the northern Syrian, the ancient city of Aleppo, the Syrian army just discovering enormous caches of weapons. These weapons and these sophisticated weapon systems just in end up in Syria by themselves. They didn't drop out of the sky. This is a very organized and sophisticated weapons procurement program. And by the way, what is allocated in military spending by the Congress, a lot of this spending that the CIA is involved in our intelligence services is really monies that are off the board. These are covert operations. This really, the sky's the limit as to what the CIA is willing to spend. And of course, the money can be procured in a variety of fashions, and the people involved in trafficking these arms and bringing them in, the CIA usually uses third parties. But the fact of the matter is the CIA is the party responsible for making sure that those weapon systems and all of the bullets, all of the tanks, the anti-tank weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, even man pads now. The Obama administration has authorized the use of the procurement of man pads to the Syrian rebels. This is a very, very dangerous development, since these weapons can take down passenger airliners, and they are at tremendous cost. Each one of these weapon systems cost millions of dollars. These are not cheap things, and these are things that
Stephen, right now I'm
Go ahead.
showing the trillions of dollars of debt is on the screen right now that the U.S. owe. $18.1 trillion in federal debt as of December 2014. So the U.S. government, the debt just keeps on compounding and compounding. They owe federal accounts $5.8 trillion, and we're talking about the federal government owing money to Social Security Trust Fund, to Medicare, to international investors, to others, to the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private bank. It's not affiliated with the government. It's 2.461 trillion, and then we have so and part of that is is because of this war, right? I mean, the perpetual war that has been going on for the last 14 years. The U.S. government is spending trillions of dollars, and it's in debt. The deficit keeps on going up, and so what we're seeing is there does not seem to be the will of our government to get out of this perpetual war, and instead is forcing the American people to live this austerity life, this austere life. And what do you think will it take, for the American people to just say, look, we want jobs, we want affordable housing, we don't want homeless people, we want good education, we want health care, and so forth. And like, for instance, on Social Security, every person in their working life pays into Social Security, but then our government keeps on saying Social Security is broke. It's not broke. It has trillions of dollars that our own government has been borrowing from, and when are they going to pay that back? And this war that's costing trillions of dollars is a huge chunk of expenditures, don't you think?
Absolutely, Myrna. There's a direct correlation between what you were just saying. I mean, the proof's in the pudding, follow the money. You mentioned the phrase perpetual wars. When Barack Obama ran for president, he criticized his predecessor, George W. Bush, for being involved in perpetual wars and the cost of those wars. But in the end, it was President Obama who continued along this path of exponential financing of all of these wars. You can count them and name them. In Afghanistan and Syria, to name two, which are at tremendous human and material cost. And as far as the budget goes,
the 2016
what you said
budget,
about...
I think there's another $685 billion deficit in this budget. And the defense bill is humongous, like another $800 billion for the defense budget. I mean,
well, a part of the mandatory portion of the budget is only servicing the interest on the debt. So the fact of the matter is, unless we are going to curtail spending, and obviously it has to come from military, the allotment that's
Anyway,
given,
Stephen, we're
which
running
is
out of time. Yeah, I
all
tell you,
right.
22 minutes go so fast. Anyway, we're gonna have to check out, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching our show, and hope to see you again. Hopefully, we've been informative. This is very critical. We're fighting for our lives, for the next generation, for our livelihood. So thank you for joining us, and please do keep informed. Thank you so much, and good night.